Have you ever noticed how most conversations feel like empty rituals? We ask, "Hi, how are you?" And the other person replies, "I'm fine, thanks," before moving on to the next distraction. The words float in the air for a second and then dissolve, leaving no imprint, no spark, no memory. These exchanges are polite, but they're also hollow. They never touch the deeper part of us that longs to be seen and understood. And that is why, despite living in a world where we are constantly connected through devices and social media, people feel more isolated than ever. We scroll through feeds, send quick emojis, type short replies, but rarely do we stop to connect in a way that is memorable and real. Yet, imagine if your very presence, your words, your energy, your stillness, could change the atmosphere around you. Imagine if a simple exchange could leave someone feeling calmer, lighter, and more alive after speaking with you. This isn't fantasy. It's the art of presence. It's the discipline of showing up with awareness, control, and clarity, the very virtues the Stoics practiced over 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That same principle applies to communication. Don't waste time trying to sound impressive or clever. Be the person whose presence speaks louder than any carefully rehearsed line. Modern psychology agrees. People rarely remember the exact words we say, but they always remember how we made them feel. Neuroscience shows that emotions are contagious. Your state of mind can ripple into others like waves spreading across water. If you're anxious, defensive, or distracted, they will feel it instantly. If you are calm, grounded, and attentive, they will feel that too. Seneca warned against being pulled into the chaos of others, writing, "A great mind becomes invincible by rising above insults and injuries." In the same way, a great mind rises above shallow words and enters conversations with depth. To practice presence is to master yourself before you attempt to influence others. It is to resist the urge to dominate, to prove, to show off. Instead, it is to anchor the space with clarity and intention. And here's where it becomes powerful. Presence is unforgettable. People will forget most conversations they have this week. But if you show up differently, calm when others are tense, thoughtful when others are reactive, attentive when others are distracted, they will remember you. They will want to see you again. This is not manipulation. It is mastery. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, I'll give you one rare phrase you can use instead of the worn-out, "Hi, how are you?" A phrase that can spark curiosity and instantly shift the tone of any interaction. But before we get there, we must explore the Stoic disciplines that turn ordinary words into extraordinary connections. These timeless lessons will show you how to communicate with clarity, humility, and strength, and how to transform every encounter into something people never forget. The first Stoic discipline of meaningful connection is understanding, not the shallow, impatient kind of listening where you're silently preparing your next counterpoint, but the deep, disciplined act of setting aside your ego long enough to step inside another person's perspective. Epictetus, once a slave and later one of the most respected Stoic teachers, said, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." These words are deceptively simple, but behind them lies a lifetime of wisdom. He was not only advising us to be precise with language, but also to master the discipline of silence, to resist the impulsive need to respond, and to instead pause long enough to absorb the reality of what someone else is trying to communicate. This practice is more than politeness. It is power. Modern neuroscience now affirms what the Stoics grasped intuitively. When a person feels truly understood, their amygdala, the small but powerful alarm center of the brain, quiets down. Stress hormones lower, blood pressure drops, and the rational prefrontal cortex takes over. In that instant, they no longer see you as a threat, but as an ally. In today's noisy world, that is rare, and rarity creates value. Think back to the last time someone listened to you without interrupting, without glancing at their phone, without dismissing your experience. Didn't you feel lighter, calmer, almost grateful. That moment of being heard is unforgettable. Seneca once wrote, "It is the power of a great mind to be unshaken by trials." Understanding is a trial because it forces you to silence your own pride and your desire to win. But when you choose to understand first, you win something greater: trust. And trust is the currency of influence. Imagine a heated meeting where everyone is defending their position, voices rising, arguments colliding. You lean in and say with composure, "I see what you mean," and suddenly the temperature of the room drops. Your words cut through chaos because they do something rare. They make another person feel safe. This is the paradox of understanding. By lowering your sword, you gain ground. By listening instead of speaking, you become the one worth listening to. The Stoics practiced this daily, not just as a communication tool, but as a discipline of self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to look at things from the perspective of others, writing, "Whenever you are offended at someone's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings." That is the essence of understanding, not merely agreeing, but pausing long enough to see the humanity beneath the words. And here lies the hidden benefit. The more you train yourself to understand others, the stronger you become at understanding yourself. Because the discipline of patience in conversation is the same discipline required for patience with your own emotions. But don't mistake this for passivity. Understanding doesn't mean surrendering your viewpoint or allowing yourself to be trampled. It means grounding yourself so fully that you can hear others without losing yourself. This is why the Stoics believed true strength was quiet, not loud. The man who must shout to prove his point is fragile. The one who can listen without being shaken is powerful. And yet, understanding alone is not the full art of presence. It is only the foundation. There is another layer, a deeper discipline that moves beyond listening: recognition, the ability to validate another person's experience, even if you disagree. And when we explore this next step, you'll see why Stoics like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius became masters of influence without needing to dominate. Stay with me, because this is where conversations shift from tolerable to unforgettable. If understanding is the foundation of Stoic presence, then recognition is the bridge that carries it into the heart of another person. Recognition is not simply nodding or offering a polite, "I get it." It is the deliberate act of acknowledging the truth in someone else's words, even when you do not share their perspective. This discipline is far rarer than we imagine, because most of us are wired to defend, to argue, to cling tightly to our sense of being correct. The ego trembles at the thought of conceding anything. But the Stoics saw things differently. They knew that conceding does not mean surrender. It means strength. Seneca once wrote, "It is the mark of a noble mind to recognize the truth, even in the words of an enemy." This insight remains timeless. To say, "You are right about that," or "That makes sense," is not to collapse into agreement. It is to demonstrate that your identity is not so fragile that it shatters at the first hint of someone else's correctness. In fact, this gesture makes your position stronger because it signals courage, the courage to admit truth wherever it appears. Think of the most powerful leaders you admire. Rarely are they the loudest voice in the room, nor the ones who bulldoze through conversations. Instead, they are the ones who disarm conflict with humility. They can validate others without losing their own stance. Picture a tense debate. Two colleagues are entrenched in opposing sides. The tension rises until one of them pauses and says, "You know, you're right about this part." That single moment transforms the dynamic. The other person feels seen, respected, no longer an enemy to defeat, but a partner to engage. And suddenly, the conversation shifts from combat to collaboration. Modern psychology calls this validation, the act of recognizing someone's feelings or viewpoint as understandable. Neuroscience shows that when people feel validated, the brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, creating trust and lowering defenses. What the Stoics discovered through philosophy, science now proves through data. But there's another layer here, one that makes this discipline even more essential: When you validate others, you are training yourself in humility, one of the core Stoic virtues. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, wrote endlessly in his private journal about keeping his ego in check. "You are but a soul carrying a corpse." These words weren't morbid. They were liberating. He reminded himself that he was human first, emperor second. That awareness allowed him to approach others without arrogance, to give recognition where it was due, and to never lose sight of the bigger picture. And here is where recognition becomes a paradoxical source of influence. The more you validate others, the more they respect you. The more you admit when they are right, the more they trust you when you stand firm. It is the opposite of weakness. It is strength through humility. But recognition has one more hidden effect. By practicing it, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of always needing to win. You learn that conceding a point does not diminish you. It liberates you. And when you carry that mindset into every interaction, people feel it. They sense that you are not playing a game of ego, but living by a deeper principle. That principle is Stoic equanimity, unshaken, unafraid, unconcerned with petty victories. Yet, recognition and understanding together still do not complete the Stoic art of presence. There is one final discipline, the hardest of all, the discipline of response, where words are chosen with precision and restraint, where silence becomes more powerful than noise, and where you learn to speak in a way that commands respect without demanding it. Stay with me, because what comes next is the essence of Stoic communication, and it might just transform the way you speak for the rest of your life. And now we arrive at the final discipline, the one that ties everything together, the discipline of response. If understanding is presence and recognition is humility, then response is mastery. To respond is not the same as to react. Reaction is instinctive, quick, driven by ego and impulse. Response is measured, deliberate, infused with reason and purpose. The Stoics trained themselves to master this distinction because they knew that words once spoken could never be recalled. Seneca warned, "Better to stumble with your feet than with your tongue." He understood that a single reckless phrase could ignite conflict, destroy trust, or wound a relationship beyond repair. The art of response begins with restraint. It is the ability to pause when everything in you wants to lash out. It is the strength to breathe, to let silence do its work, and then to speak only when your words carry weight. In our noisy age, where conversations have become competitions and silence feels like weakness, restraint is a rare superpower. Think of the person who does not rush to fill the air, who does not speak just to be heard, but waits. Calm, patient, unshaken. When they finally speak, every word carries authority. That is Stoic response. But this discipline goes deeper still. It is not only about silence, it is about precision. Every word is chosen not for ornament, but for impact. Epictetus taught his students, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." That sentence contains a lifetime of wisdom. How often do we speak before thinking, blurting out what feels right in the moment, only to regret it later? The Stoic path demands something different, that we examine our thoughts, refine them, and release them only when they align with truth. This discipline is not cold or mechanical, it is profoundly human. Because when you respond with restraint and precision, you create space for others. You show them that they matter enough for you to measure your words. You demonstrate self-control, which inspires respect. And you embody the rare quality of trustworthiness, because people know you will not betray them with careless speech. Now, let's return to where we began. The emptiness of, "Hi, how are you?" That phrase is the very opposite of Stoic response. It is automatic, thoughtless, a script that requires no attention and sparks no depth. The Stoic path calls us higher. It calls us to replace routine with presence, to speak in ways that awaken instead of numbing. And so here is the phrase I promised. the one that carries all three Stoic disciplines: understanding, recognition, and response within it. Instead of, "Hi, how are you?" look at the person before you and say, "Tell me something good." 4 words, but filled with power. Unlike the routine greeting, this phrase disrupts the script. It forces the other person to pause, to reflect, to share something meaningful. It shifts the energy instantly from shallow exchange to real connection. And when they answer, you are not just a stranger or acquaintance. You are the one who opened a door for them to step into positivity, gratitude, or reflection. That makes you unforgettable. It makes you magnetic. Because you did not simply fill silence with noise, you created a moment that mattered. The Stoics would recognize this for what it is: the discipline of response, alive in practice. You chose words not carelessly but carefully, not for you but for them. And in doing so, you aligned with the deepest truth of Stoic wisdom. That mastery of the self is the key to mastery of the world. So the next time you stand on the edge of a conversation, remember the 3 disciplines: understand, recognize, respond. Practice them not as tricks, but as daily exercises in presence, humility, and mastery. And above all, remember that awakening doesn't come from saying more, it comes from saying what matters.